So HBO Max premiered a new game show called The Climb, not to be confused with the video game called The Climb, or I think the feature film called The Climb. Like, come on, guys, there's better ways of naming stuff. They could have called it like Sending It, something like that. Anyway, so The Climb was organized by Jason Momoa and um, Chris Sharma. And for those who don't know, Chris Sharma, well, like I'd say the most famous climber right now is Alex Honnold, and Chris Sharma would have been like the Alex Honnold of the 90s, kind of like he was a superstar. He was one of the guys that even people outside of climbing knew. I think a greater percentage of the non-climbing population knows who Alex Honnold is today than knew who Chris Sharma was back then. But that's just an effect of like the way the media's changed and stuff like that. So it's a it's a climbing competition show where they take, I want to say they start with 8 or 10 climbers. It's like an elimination style competition. So like Big Brother, or wait, Big Brother might not, I don't know. I never watched an episode of Big Brother in my life. What am I talking about? Like American Idol. This shows you how old I am when it comes to competition shows. Like I'm going back to American Idol. You know, so every week there's a player who gets kicked out and then they move on to the next week. And so they premiered with 3 episodes of this show. And Jason Momoa is obviously kind of just there to sell it because he appears like at the beginning of every episode to talk with Chris Sharma. Now, I should say Momoa is like a legit climber. Um, Momoa was like doing this stuff at the same time Sharma was. He wasn't doing competition climbing so much, but he was doing like bouldering, outdoor climbing back in the 90s. Um, he was putting in his dues just like everyone else. So I don't want to sell this like it's some guy who like saw Free Solo or the Dawn Wall and thought, oh, that's cool. Like find someone and produce a show like that. Like he was legit. I mean, he's had uh interviews in climbing magazines and stuff like that since. But he's not like an integral part of the show. He's just there to sell it. And there's a woman whose name I forget, and I'm really sorry for forgetting it because she seems great. But she and Sharma are like the judges or whatever. Like they're the two hosts, even though it was pitched as Momoa and Sharma. Um, in fact, I really wish I remembered her name because I like her perspective almost a little more than Sharma's, but I'll get into that. So here's my problem. So I'm a climber. Um, just so everyone knows where I'm coming from when I say this. Like I'm a gym climber mostly. I have climbed outside. I have led sport climbs. Sport climbs are where there's bolts in the wall and you clip something into the bolt and clip it across your rope to protect yourself. So I've led sport climbs. I think the hardest one I ever led was a 5.7. Um, so I know about like I'm versed in climbing. I'm not very good at it. I've never led a trad rail where you have to like place your own protection. I have some gear for it, but I've never had a chance to lead it. But I have been on trad climbing trips where I followed. And so when you follow, you clean the gear as the leader will put the gear in, flip the rope in. Whenever they get up to the top, they start to belay you and you pull the gear out as you climb. So I've done that, but I've never led climb. And I don't push grades. Like I'm never have been. I don't know if it's just the weight. Part of it's fear. I know I've got some fears still around falling. I have both fears around failure when it comes to climbing and fears around success. It's a weird thing because if you're successful at it, then you're like expected to be able to do it every time. And so then if you can't do it every time, like were you really successful? I get in my own head way too much on this stuff. So I just want to let you guys know where I'm coming from. So I'm not just some guy who's like, seen a couple movies. Like I know some things about how climbing works. Um, I get excited when when climbing entered the Olympics. That was really cool. I get really pissed off though when NBC decides like, oh, we're not going to show any of that on TV, or at least not on streaming services, despite the fact that most young people use streaming services, and the Olympic Committee specifically added surfing and skateboarding and climbing to like appeal to younger viewers. But NBC's like, nah, that's all right. We're not going to do that. That's okay. I mean, they can throw money away if they want, but I was still excited for it. But that goes to my point. So what you have in the show is a whole bunch of really good climbers who get taken basically to Europe. I think all three of the first episodes take place in Europe and get to climb some really sick routes. Like the first climb, it's actually one of Sharma's specialties. Oh, am I about to cross Tower Bridge? That's dope. That's awesome. Anyway, it's deep water soloing. So it's essentially you're climbing on rock, but if you fall, you're bouldering, so you're climbing without a rope. And if you fall, you hit the ocean. It's like a 45-foot route that they climb. So you have to fall right, but if you do fall right, you're pretty well protected. So I mean, just beautiful elimination style competition show, which means at the end of every week, someone gets sent home. And I'm watching this like it's not like we don't already have a model for how to run a climbing competition. And Sharma knows this because he's like Mr. Climbing Competition from back in the day, right? So I don't understand. Like, it would have been really easy to set it up. So you invite 10, 12 people or whatever it is. Everyone climbs every week. They rate people on how well they climb. And then at the end, the winner gets the prize. But instead, they do this elimination style thing, which does a couple of things. Number one, it gamifies the results. It happened in the first episode already. There was a guy who got above the bottom because they've been told, like, who moves on is going to be based on how high they climb up this wall. So he knows he's safe, and it's raining a little bit, and he's on a wet wall. So rather than trying to send it, he gets high enough, and then he just bails and jumps in the water. And Sharma, like, spoilers, I'm sorry, but Sharma like gets on him about that. He's like, we want you to push. We invited you on this because we want you to push to your limit or whatever. And I get where the guy's coming from because like it's no good to like in the first week of a competition like this to like get injured and have to go home or whatever. Now, if it was a traditional style climbing competition where you get scored on how high you make it up the wall, and then those scores get tallied, and then like at the end of the competition, so at the end of however, I'm not sure how many weeks this is running, 10 maybe, at the end of the whole thing, whoever wins wins. That would have made a lot more sense. Because the other thing that happens is these are all really cool like people. They're amateur climbers, but they're all like, they're all cool. They're all doing it for their own reasons. It comes with, I think the winner gets like 100 grand, and then on top of that, like $100,000 sponsorship deal with I think it's called Pravna. It's a clothing company that Sharma is either sponsored by or is affiliated with it somehow. But but yeah, that's just it. It's just like, you know, we already have a model for what a climbing competition looks like. We didn't need to reinvent the wheel. We don't need to introduce this like phony baloney reality show BS, you know, to something like climbing. We could have just done this competition style. And I don't know what compelled them to do otherwise. But that's the one thing about the show that I don't like, the general format. So, but I'm going to keep watching. I mean, look, I love climbing. I wish I was better at it. It's something I want to focus a little more on this year. But I love watching climbing. If there's a climbing movie I haven't seen, I want to see it. Um, it's a beautiful sport, gets you outside, works you a lot harder than you'd think it would. Yeah, I think it's fantastic. Um, and all the people on the show just are really cool. I just kind of wish they would have formatted it differently.